At the time of writing this story, I'm a 28-year-old male. But when this occurred, it was on my 20th birthday, late afternoon. I'd only just moved out for the first time out of my parents' house. I was now living with my girlfriend, who had been together for 8 months. My girlfriend, who I will call B for this story, was due home from work in roughly 3 hours. We were planning to go out for some drinks later that night. I've had a hard day. I was really disappointed. I was between jobs. B and I were just living off her money. She'd been saving and saving and saving for my birthday, and all of my money had gone on the bond for our rental. So nothing too impressive was going to be happening for my big 2-0. My mother kept calling us, asking us to come over for dinner for my birthday. I didn't want to go back. Not yet. So instead she ordered me a pizza, delivered to the door. In roughly 40 minutes there was a knock. The pizza was here. The pizza was delivered by a beautiful blonde. All I could do was stare. I could hardly get my words out. She was trying to hand me my pizza and all I was doing was stuttering. She could tell. But suddenly, I was like a man possessed. Because once I had the pizza in my hands, suddenly I was asking if she wanted to share it with me. To my complete surprise, she agreed. Here we were sitting on the floor, eating pizza. Next minute, it was her. After we did the deed on the floor, she asked if she could use the bathroom. While she was in the bathroom, I noticed her fanny pack on the couch, and I went through it. I stole all of the paper cash, the 50s, the 20s. There was 100 in there as well. I managed to stuff it all into my pocket by the time she returned. After grabbing one more slice, she kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her bag, looked at her phone. She told me that she had 3 missed calls. The store was obviously looking for her and she had to go. I saw her off and closed the door. I put my back against the door and everything I had just done flooded into me like a wave. I just cheated on my girlfriend. I just had a sexual encounter with a stranger. I absolutely robbed her blind right under her nose. My mind was exploding. B was due to return from work in about 45 minutes. I cleaned up, had a shower, threw on a new t-shirt, put the pizza all the way downstairs in the bins down there so all the evidence was gone. Then I got ready. That evening, I told B that Mum sent us money for my birthday instead. I spent all the money on her. I will never tell her what I've done. This is my confession. Hi everyone, I'm Brildain. If you would like your story to have a chance at being narrated on the channel, please send your confession to my email address, which you can find in the About section. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. All these things will go a really long way into the survival of the channel. Thanks. Now to the next confession. I have a confession. I've been holding this to myself for the last 32 years. But since this channel exists, I think it's time to unburden it. I lived in my family home with my mother, my father, and my 2 siblings. At the time, my brother was 9 and Jolene was 7. I'd just entered high school and I was beginning to make new friends. Finally. I was very glad. I hadn't had friends for most of my childhood years, just my siblings, and I was starting to think I was just too cool to hang out with them. One weekend, my new friends, Dave and Matthew, came over for a sleepover. They had permission to stay both nights over the weekend, and we had planned to hang out just being boys, enjoying our youth. During the weekend, one of the things that we did was break into my father's liquor cabinet. We poured about 1/4 of the contents into drink bottles and replaced the liquor with water and placed it back in his cabinet, thinking he would be none the wiser. We ended up mixing it all into one bottle. We might have ended up with maybe 1/2 liter of mixed liquors in total. My parents were around, but they weren't keeping an eye on us. They thought we were old enough and knew better. They thought we would know right from wrong. And they spent the weekend in the garden and doing their own thing, entertaining my brother and sister. My new friends and I spent the weekend going on walks and drinking small amounts of the alcohol. It didn't take us very much to get drunk, so the alcohol that we had collected went a really long way. On the Saturday evening, we were sneaking back in from exploring and drinking along our adventure on the train tracks. My family was having a barbecue in the backyard with the neighbors. They had not known that we had returned. We decided it would be a fun thing to spike my siblings' drinks with alcohol. We watched from a top window down on the barbecue as both Douglas and Jolene became intoxicated. We thought it was very funny at the time. The adults not paying all that much attention, with no knowledge of the spiking of the drinks, didn't think much of their behavior. Kids just being kids, silly and having fun. That was until Douglas tripped on his own feet near the barbecue. He fell against it and knocked it down. Hot coals rained everywhere. Douglas landed on a number of these as well. The adults now in a frenzy. Panic was breaking out and everyone was quickly mobilized to take my brother to the hospital. I remember the sound of my little sister screaming with all the chaos. My friends and I were so scared, we left the house, afraid of the consequences of being linked to all the events. We went out into the woods and slept there all night, leaving the rest of the alcohol out there. In the morning, before the sun rose, we walked back, absolutely terrified of what would be awaiting us. However, when we were at the bottom of our street, we could see smoke. We made our way up the street, running faster and faster to see what was happening. My family was huddled outside and a bunch of the neighbors were there as well. My house was burning. When my mother saw us, she was so grateful to see us. She was distraught with the house burning down and not knowing where we were. She was a mess. Everyone around us was so happy to see that we were alive. They obviously looked for us and couldn't find us. Turns out one of the coals had flown next to the house and rolled under it, catching fire to one of the beams holding it up. The fire must have started in the early evening and burnt and smoldered, catching fire when everyone was asleep. With all the chaos with my brother, my parents didn't even think that it was us boys that were at fault. After the weekend, both Dave and Matthew never talked to me ever again. If our eyes ever met during school, it was a quick glance away. I ended up making other friends, but they were a different kind of breed of person. We spent our time in the library and we studied. My brother, scarred for life. He had a rather large burn on the left side of his face, and a few more down his body. Burnt into him, the hot coals, they were blue, like tattoos. They've dulled over the years, but the colour still remains. It wasn't until his 20s that he ended up getting his first girlfriend. My sister, she ended up going vegan, as the mere smell of cooking meat sets off her trauma and she gets anxiety attacks. She's living the rest of her life with the fear of smelling meat. Doesn't end there. With what happened to our house, my parents also didn't have insurance. We had to move in with my grandparents. We never financially recovered from the loss. This is a secret story of how I destroyed my entire family's life. No one knows. This is my confession. I have a confession. I am a terrible person, but no one has ever known this. I am now a 52-year-old woman. I live in a multi-story building with 19 other residents. I don't know how I've allowed myself to get like this. Maybe it's the fact that I never got married and I'm resentful of that fact. I'm scared to die alone. I know this is not an excuse for the things I have done, but I cannot take any of it back now. The apartment below me has developed a reputation for being haunted, of all things. Every single couple that's ever rented the place has ended up fighting a lot, breaking up and moving out relatively fast. The apartment is not haunted. It was all me. Whenever a new couple moved in, I would leave love notes in the mailbox addressed to one of them that I selected at random at the time that they moved in. I would call their home. If I got the wrong person, I would quickly hang up. If the right person answered, I would pretend to be a telemarketer. Once I even snuck a pair of lacy underwear into the clean washing for one of them to find from the communal laundry room. It was a lot of fun. It was a very fun game for many years. I think I've broken up maybe 9 relationships. Watching them go from carefree to suspicious, then to full-blown distrust, and ultimately ending and walking away from each other. As I said, I'm a terrible person. All of that, however, is nothing compared to my last reign of terror. A new couple moved in. I did what I usually did. I sussed them out over a few weeks before starting my attack. The male spent a lot of time at home. I would have been less successful if I picked him, so I picked the woman as my target. She was beautiful. She went to work every day. So first, I sent a single rose to the address. I sent it to the house via messenger. I ended up eating dinner that night with sounds of argument coming out of their balcony window. I was pleased with my first move, and I thought this couple would be so ill-suited and they would break up so fast. I went on with the phone calls, but only during the evening when she was home, so she could catch the call. The fights continued. One weekend, I caught the lady in the courtyard. She was having a cigarette. She looked deep in thought, and I decided to engage her in conversation. To my surprise, she didn't have anything to say other than, "I'm sorry." I didn't know what to really make of this. I assumed that maybe she was apologizing for all the noise that they were making during the arguments, but she didn't care to elaborate. She wasn't interested in further conversation with me. Later that night, I understood. There was a sound of gunshot. It rang out during the night. It startled me. I woke up in a fright. I didn't move. I was stuck in bed. I understood clearly what had happened immediately, and I felt the weight of the event on my entire soul. This was not just the result of my usual terrible games. I had gone much further, obviously. I had pushed the wrong person. A life had just ended, and I knew it was my fault. The woman had killed her partner. Unable to take the accusations and his wrath, she decided to kill him to make him stop. And it was all my fault. I've ruined many relationships, and now I have completely stolen a woman's freedom and ended a man's life. I deserve to be forever unhappy and alone. I am a terrible person. And this is my confession.